So I will carry on in this, discussion, in this, recording. I will carry on, explaining what I already started before, basically the different arguments in favor of the syllable unit in phonological analysis. So I'm basically considering page 77. I will now be considering page 77. So if you still remember, we said before that the many schools of linguistic thought were criticized, basically structuralists and let's say generativists, for the reason that they didn't accord due attention to the syllable unit, and which is as we said before, a prosodic unit, and also to prosodic features such as stress, pitch, length, intonation, among other things. So then when the syllable was not recognized, many things were missed. There was no account of adequate account of prosodic phenomena or features, among which we have the phenomenon of stress. So in the last audio, I have been explaining the fact that we have a number of arguments favoring, favoring the recognition of, the syllable unit in phonological analysis. So far, I have, considered two arguments, and now I will be dealing with argument number 3. So it is said for this argument that the domain of stress, as we said before, should be in fact the syllable. So even if when we claim, and I explained this in class, even if when we claim that stress is a feature, a property of the vowel, then it's not it's not workable, it's not turnable, because stress has proven to be a kind of relative prominence. That is to say, a kind of prominence that expresses the relations among different syllables, meaning that it should be viewed in a relational rather than individual way. So when then it is said stress shifts from one syllable to another, it makes it perceptually stronger than it was without stress. And vice versa, when a syllable loses stress, it is perceived weaker than before. So here it means that stress is responsible for what we call reduction, for vowel reduction in different words and for different syllables. So if we just consider the example in 220, in which we have Canada, we have the word Canada, in which stress is on the first syllable, and this first syllable is going to lose its stress because it's going to be reduced. Since it loses its stress, the vowel is also going to be reduced to a schwa. So when we have an adjective, we won't say Canadian, but we say Canadian. We say Canadian. So stress is shifting from the first syllable to the second, for the simple reason that the first syllable has, lost its primary stress. Therefore, it should be, reduced to a schwa. So as it is explained here, the vowel A in Canada is phonetically a full tense vowel. The same vowel reduces to a schwa, the weakest form of a vowel in Canadian, where stress falls on the penultimate vowel, or let's say the penultimate syllable, that is to say the one before the last. A fourth argument in favor of the syllable or syllable structure is that the nature of a syllable determines the application of phonological processes. So, as I explained it in one of the audios, what is a phonological process indeed? So, a phonological process is the operation whereby some phones undergo certain phonetic changes in their manner or point of articulation. Simply put, as I explained it before, a phonological process is when we have, a change on the sound structure in a given language under certain conditions. That is, certain phones or sounds will undergo change, basically phonetic changes, either in their, point or manner of articulation or voicing. We can also have a change in voicing, as we dealt with that in relation to, the attachment of the plural ending s to different nouns. I'm sorry. In which case we said that. The plural ending is realized into three different sounds according to the voicing of the neighboring consonants, of the base morpheme. So, here we have an example from Semsetre, and this example is mentioned by Saib in 1978, who has shown that emphasis or pharyngalization تفخيم هذه ظاهرة التفخيم in Tamazighs, and we have it also in Moroccan Arabic. So pharyngalization spreads to neighboring speech, or to neighboring other syllables in the word, in a manner strictly regulated by syllable structure. It means that we can't perceive of pharyngalization as a phenomenon which has its domain as a vowel, for instance, or a consonant, but we should rather conceive of it as operating within syllable boundaries. That is to say, its domain of application is basically the syllable or syllable structure. So let's illustrate this argument with reference to phonemic analysis. The authors will be, illustrating this, elaborating on this with reference to, phonemic analysis. So here you should consider clear and dark L in the English data in 21, below. So here you have, play, you have apple, you have leaf, you have fill, you have let, you have tell, you have glimpse, you have angle, you have clay, you have ankle, we have notable, we have notably, we have possible, possibly, economical, economically, predictable, predictably. So in accounting then, so in an attempt to account for the distribution of clear and dark L, we will have to refer to the components of the syllable. We have to refer to the components of the syllable. That is to say, by components we mean basically the different positions of the syllable. And if you still remember, we said that the syllable is basically made up of three different positions. We have the nucleus position, which is usually filled by a vowel. We have the onset position, which is usually occupied by consonants, and we have the coda position, a position which is also occupied by consonants. So then, in order to account for whether the L is dark or In order to account for the fact whether the consonant the liquid is dark or clear, we have to take into account the occurrence, the environment of occurrence of this l. So while clear l, it is claimed that while clear l occurs at the beginning of a syllable, as we have it in play. So in play, it's clear. Leave, it's clear. Let, it's clear. Glimpse, it's clear. Clay, it's clear. Dark law consistently occurs at the end of the syllable, as we have in apple, we have in feel, we have in tell, we have in angle, and we have in ankle. Okay, they are in complementary distribution. That is to say, these two phones are in complementary distribution, and their allophonic variation is considered by syllable structure, or their allophonic variation is sensitive to syllable structure. That is to say, to the position of the consonant within the syllable, whether it is going to be in the beginning or it's going to be in the end of the syllable. Okay, so having dealt with the arguments in favor of the recognition of a unit that is larger than the segment, which is basically the syllable unit, now we will be considering syllable structure in general. If you still remember, I told you before that syllable structure varies from one language to another. It varies from one language to another. So in phonology literature, the discussion of syllables involves two elements. So when we try to discuss the syllable in the literature, we focus on two different elements. The first one is the structure of the syllable, and the second is the rhythmic relations characterizing syllables. The rhythmic relations characterizing syllables. So as we have just seen, the obligatory element of a syllable is the vowel, and this is clear. So if you still remember, I told you that that's based on different definitions given to the syllable in the literature. It's all the time claimed, and it is agreed on, that we can say that the syllable is a unit that is involving a peak of sonority. A peak of sonority. By peak of sonority, we basically mean the vowel unit. Because as we have seen, as we saw before, the vowel is associated with high degree of sonority. High degree of sonority that is surrounded by increasing and decreasing valleys of sonority. By increasing, we mean basically, the consonants increase in sonority involved in, the consonants, or being, a feature or associated or inherent in the consonants in the onset position. And for decreasing sonority, we mean the sonority degrees inherent in the consonants in the coda position of the syllable. Okay, so then the vowel is the nucleus. It's the core or the obligatory element of a syllable. Then a syllable must contain a vowel. So you know that when you are asked to, consonants are optional. Therefore, without a vowel, we cannot talk about the syllable. The vowel is called the nucleus or peak of the syllable. However, in some languages, certain phones can play the role of the vowel. And I gave you the case of, liquids and nasals in English. When I told you that normally nasals and liquids are considered as consonants. They are considered as consonants, but we can, in under certain conditions, these consonants may be syllabic. They may have the feature syllabic in certain, environments or under certain conditions. So the example is given here in, 222. And it's basically, extracted from British English and American English, okay? So in British English, we say bird, bird. So you have to notice here that the R, the consonant R in, British English is not pronounced. So this is a constraint indeed. It's a constraint in British English. And this constraint is the fact that the R is not pronounced in British English when it occurs in the coda position of the syllable, because here it's in these words we have here, in bird, in ge, in first, in sir. So the ra occurs in the coda position. And this is the reason why it's not pronounced. This is a very important constraint in British English. But when the R occurs in the onset position, it is pronounced. Let me give you examples such as reconsider. So we say reconsider, reconsider. So the first R is pronounced simply because it is in the onset position. Recall, recall. So R is pronounced because it is not in, and we have many other examples. But in American English, we say bird. We say bird. That is to say, the R is pronounced. The R is pronounced. Then let me ask you this question and try to clarify this. So then, if in bird, if in girl, and if in first and sir, we will have, I'm speaking about American English. We can have this R functioning as syllabic, consonants. So for instance, if we consider bird, then what is the first syllable? It's the syllable b. It's the syllable b. That is to say, we have the consonant that is followed by the long vowel which we said that it's basically a central vowel. When discussing vowels, we have b. Then we will be left with the two consonants which are in the basically two consonants. We will have r and we will have d. Then are we going to claim that because we have two possibilities, that is to say, to simply assume that the two consonants R and D belong, or they occupy, the coda position of the syllable. The coda position, I'm dealing with the, pay attention, I'm dealing with page 79, basically the example in 222. So I'm dealing with this data that is extracted, with the data that is extracted from, English, dealing basically with the British English and the American English. So I have said that I have said that when we have syllabification of let's consider the word bird. When we have syllabification, we will have first syllable including the consonant b in onset position, the vowel e, and then we will be left with two consonants which are r and d. Then are we going to consider that they occupy the coda position? No. It is claimed in the literature that it's better to assume that, the R, which is liquid here, is syllabic. That is to say, it's playing the role of a vowel, in which case it will be occupying the nucleus position of a new syllable. and the D would be in coda position, so that we will end up having two different syllables. The first one is B, and the second is RD. Same thing for the other words, okay? So in the American English words above, the peak of the syllable is, R. Is, R. Of the second syllable. Pay attention. So the peak of the second syllable is R. Other phones that play the role of vowels in syllables are, as I have just said, are nasals and liquids. So we have, in addition to R, we have L, we have N, and we have M. And they are called syllabic consonants. They are called syllabic consonants. So then pay attention. So it should be observed that the consonants that can be considered as syllabic or play the role of a vowel are basically those which are associated with the feature, or which have the feature plus sonorant. Because as we said before, liquids and nasals are basically plus sonorant. Liquids and nasals are basically plus sonorant. So it means that they share, this feature with vowels. Because they share this feature with vowels, they could be, considered as syllabic in certain, languages. In certain languages. So this is indicated by the diacritic that is placed under the consonants. And we have other cases in which we have these liquids and nasals, as in little, in bottom, and bottom, respectively. So as shown, in the hierarchical, let's say, as shown in the hierarchical representation in 223. So the syllable, so you see we have a symbol here that is standing for a syllable node, and I already gave you this hierarchical representation. I showed you this hierarchical representation within the class, the face-to-face class, okay, if you still remember. So the symbol standing first, we have the symbol standing for the syllable node. So it is claimed that the syllable is basically it is shown that it is basically a unit that is divided into two different parts. We have at the beginning with the onset, and we have the second part, which is called the rhyme, and this rhyme is itself divided into two different elements, which are the peak and the coda. The peak and the coda. However, it should be observed, and we said that before, that this is not a syllable template that can hold for all languages of the world, because as I told you before sorry, we have minimal and maximal expansions of the syllable. We have minimal and maximal expansions of the syllable. So if we consider syllables in English, so they may start with at least one consonant and three at most, as I told you before. And we may have a syllable in English that is onsetless. That is to say, we may have a syllable involving only a vowel. So these are constraints. Let's say what we will be stating in this case, and things which are discussed on page 79 may be referred to as constraints. We can claim that these are constraints on syllable structure. Constraints on syllable structure. That is to say, we will be dealing with the minimal and maximal expansions of the syllable in English and maybe in other languages, okay? So, syllables in English may start with at least one consonant and at most three. Or we may have zero consonants. We may have zero consonants. This is the onset position. They may end up, for the coda position, they may end in up to four consonants. So we may have zero consonants or four maximum, or four consonants maximum in coda position. So the consonants starting the syllable constitute its onset. and the consonants ending the syllable are referred to as the coda or offset of the syllable. The nucleus and the coda, as seen in 223, constitute the rhyme of the syllable. So the representation you have in 223 illustrates the internal structure of the syllable. And the example that is given here is sit, for instance, where we have, the sigma, which is standing for the syllable. So the peak of the syllable, or let's say the nucleus, so you have the right to use, either you use a rhyme, or you say either you use, peak, or you use nucleus. It's the same. So the peak of the syllable is the element where pitch, frequency of vocal cords vibration increases, and this is what is referred to as intensity, loudness, and even length. So these are features or characteristics of the peak of the syllable. So the peak of the syllable is the element where pitch, that is to say frequency of the vocal cords vibration. So this is pitch. Pitch is basically the frequency of vocal cords vibration increases. So we have pitch creating intensity, loudness, and even length. So it is the element which is said to bear stress or accent, that is to say, the nucleus of the syllable. So syllables are also classified as open, light, if the peak is not followed by a consonant or if it's not a complex one. It is heavy, closed, if its peak is followed by one consonant or if it's a long vowel, or if it's a long vowel. So here I will be referring you back to a notion that we discussed in face-to-face class, which is basically that of syllable weight. It's basically the notion of syllable weight. If you still remember, we divided syllables into two classes, light and heavy syllables. So we said that a light syllable is one which involves which is open, ending basically in a short vowel, and a heavy syllable is one which is open but ending in a long vowel, or one that is followed or that is closed by a consonant. And this is what is said here. A syllable may also be said to be super heavy. Super heavy. What does it mean, a super heavy syllable? Super heavy syllable simply means that its peak is followed by more than one consonant, as shown in 224. So in 224, we are trying to categorize, syllables into, we have indeed a number of canonic patterns. We have a number of canonic patterns, and we are, stating whether, syllables are light or heavy. So here, a syllable is super heavy, as I have just said, if it is followed, or the peak is followed by more than one consonant, as shown in 224 below, where we have syllable boundaries. So the symbol that is with S with a bar stands for syllable boundary, and C0 stands for any number of consonants including 0. C1 means a maximum of one consonant, and C2 indicates a minimum of two consonants. Okay. So considering the canonic patterns we have in 224, to begin with light syllables, as we said before, a light syllable may be only a syllable that is made up of one vowel, syllable that is made up of a consonant in the onset, one consonant in the onset, and a vowel, a short vowel basically in the nucleus. It may also be, a syllable that is made up of two consonants in the onset and one short simple vowel in the nucleus, or it could also be a syllable that is made up of three consonants in the onset and one short vowel in the nucleus. So if you still remember, we said that, we said that consonants in the onset are irrelevant. They are irrelevant to, the identification as follows. In the literature, you will find a number of, principles governing syllabification or syllabification processes, syllabification principles, or you may even find in the literature algorithms, what we call algorithms for syllabification. Algorithms for syllabification. So the principles of syllabifying words are as follows. So you have a kind of dot which stands for syllable division. So then, number one, if two vowels occur in a sequence, so the syllable break, that is to say, where you will be, dividing the word, parsing it, is between those vowels. So you have the form, the canonic form you have here in one. It means that you will have first vowel. It may be followed by a consonant, and then you have second vowel, which may be, followed by a consonant. So you have kairos, and you have biology. You have biology. So this biology is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4. It's divided into 4 syllables. If one consonant occurs between two vowels, you have one consonant occurring between two vowels, then you will be, asking the question whether this consonant is, and the second vowel is strong. That is to say, it is stressed. This is very important. If one consonant occurs between two vowels, you will have one consonant occurring between two vowels, and the second one of these vowels is stressed. So then you will ask yourself, how are we going to syllabify, the consonant? Are we going to syllabify it? Are we going to adjoin it as a consonant in the coda position of, the first vowel, or we will, adjoin it as a consonant in the onset position of the second syllable? That is to say, beginning the second, syllable. So then it is claimed here that that consonant is part of the second syllable. So here you have the example of resent, as you can see, and rotation. So in resent, so this S, this you have here, is not syllabified as the coda of the first syllable, but it is rather syllabified as the onset of the second syllable. So that you will say resent, 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 okay? And rotation, rotation. Again, you have here the consonant T in the second example. In the second example, you have the consonant T, in which case also it is not syllabified as the the coda. It's not syllabified as the coda of the first syllable, but it is rather syllabified as the onset of the second syllable. Okay. Number 3. If two vowels are separated by a consonant cluster, now it's not only one consonant, but we have a cluster of consonants. That is to say, we may have more than one consonant in between two vowels. So then this is another issue, that is to say, to reflect on. That is to say, how are we going again? How are we going to parse the word? So then parsing or syllable division depends. In this case, then it depends on the nature of the consonants in that cluster. The nature of consonants in that cluster. When we speak about nature of consonants, meaning there we have to consider into to take into consideration their manner of articulation. Their manner of articulation. their manner, point and manner of articulation. This is very important, okay? Whether they are, that is to say, whether the consonants are true consonants or obstruents, whether they are liquids or nasals, okay? So if the cluster then, so we have conditions, of course. And this is, what bears witness to the fact that syllable structure is governed. So we all the time claim that syllable structure is governed, or the process of syllabification or syllabification is governed by a number of principles. It is governed by a number of, or is regulated. It's governed or regulated by a number of principles. And certain conditions, or a number of conditions, should also be taken into consideration. So then if that cluster of consonants is of the type that can occur initially, if the cluster of those consonants is of the type that can occur initially, in this case, in this example, you have, for instance, the consonant S, beginning, the syllable S followed by another consonant. We have first consonant, then the second one is R, and we have first consonant and the second one is L, and we have first consonant and the second one is W, and you have three here consonants. The first one is the second is a consonant, and that is to say any consonant, and we have the consonant R. And the following vowel is strong, that is to say is stressed. So the whole cluster is part of the syllable with the strong vowel. It means that the consonants would be belong, they would constitute, they would occupy, let's say, these consonants would occupy the onset of the stressed vowel, the stressed syllable, the stressed syllable. So in here we have examples here with consonants T, R. Since it is the mid vowel that is stressed, the mid syllable, let's say, which is stressed, then these two consonants are in onset position of the second syllable. Decline. So we say decline, decline. Where is the stressed syllable then? Where is the stressed syllable? It's the second one, of course. Since it is the second syllable that is stressed, then both the consonant K and the consonant L, both consonants S and L, will occupy the onset position of the stressed syllable. Yeah, they would occupy the onset position of the stressed syllable. We have again require, require. So for the verb require, so for wire. So because here we have pay attention in the second syllable. Pay attention, as I all the time inform you. When we deal with the phonetic and phonological analysis, we should forget about spelling. We should forget about spelling and pay more attention to the level of pronunciation. That is to say, how words are pronounced. So for require, so we have k for the second syllable. We have k, we have w, we have k, wire. We have k and we have w. We have k and we have w. That is to say, we have one consonant and we have w, and then we have the vowel. In which case, this cluster of consonants, that is to say, k, w, is going to be, they are going to occupy the onset of the, second stressed syllable. We have distress, distress. Again, it's clear. Here we have, the consonant cluster S, T, R, S, T, R, which are, considered as occupying, the onset position of the second stressed syllable. And we have suspect. We have suspect, suspect. So again here, the consonant S, P, the two consonants p occupy the onset position of the second stressed syllable. So, number 4, if the consonant cluster cannot occur in word initial position, the consonants are divided in such a way that the second syllable begins with a single consonant or with a cluster that can occur initially. So let's consider the word candy. So here, as you can see, the consonant cluster is not occurring initially. It's not occurring initially, but it's rather occurring between two vowels, in which case here the consonants are divided. We are not adjoining these consonants. We are not adjoining them to one syllable, but rather the first consonant is joined as the coda is joined as consonants filling in the coda position of the first syllable, and the second, which is d, is syllabified as occupying the onset position of the second syllable. You have atlas again. So here atlas, same thing. You have here t being the occupying the coda position of the first syllable, and the onset position of the second syllable. Carpenter, carpenter again. So carpenter again, here r is in coda position, p is onset position, and concrete, concrete again. So here we have n in coda position, and c concrete, concrete, concrete. K r is in onset position. Then these are the some. These are in fact only some of the principles governing syllable structure. Some of the principles governing the process of syllabification. Because as I have just said, when we want to syllabify, we won't do it in a half-hearted way, but we can't syllabify in any given way. But as I have just said, we have certain principles which govern the process of syllabification. A number of principles govern the process of syllabification, or we can also put it differently, saying that syllabification is regulated. You can say that the process of syllabification in different languages is regulated by certain principles and conditions. So I would like just to add that so in the literature you may find that linguists or phonologists speak about having universal principles, that is to say principles that hold true for all languages, or for almost all languages of the world, as you may find language particular principles. Language particular principles, that is to say principles which are only particular to this language and cannot work for other languages. They are only proper, let's say they may be only proper for one language, but can't hold true, that can't be applicable to other languages, because as I all the time told you, we all the time inform you, we have variations. We of course have variation for syllable structure and syllabification. That is to say, both syllabification and both syllable structure and syllabification are going to vary from one language to another, in the sense that the principles that may work for one particular language may not be applicable to another. This is a very important point that you should bear in mind, as I all the time inform you. As I all the time inform you. Okay. Stress back. Trying to. Add more important things on the prosodic phenomenon or the prosodic feature stress. So stress is, it can be, it can, have a number of functions in different languages. Stress can have a number of functions in different languages. Okay. Um, it can be phonemic or systemic or phonetic predictable. So when we, speak about stress being phonemic, it means that it is lexical, it is it is contrastive. That is to say, when you shift when you, have, stress on a particular position in a word in certain languages, and you have them on, on a particular position in another word, and the meaning changes. This is very important. The meaning changes, then this means that stress is phonemic. But it is phonetic predictable when it does not, participate in meaning change, but is rather, predictable from, certain factors. We may predict it on, based on a number of factors and, factors and, let's say, criteria in different languages. So in this case, stress is claimed to be predictable. Okay. So it is systemic when it differentiates word meaning. This is what is mentioned here. It is, let's say, phonemic, or we can also say that it's lexical or contrastive when it differentiates word meaning, as in Korean language. So in Korean language, stress assumes a, phonemic or systemic, systemic function. And it is phonetic when it is predicted by a consistent rule. We can predict its occurrence. So in Moroccan Arabic and Portuguese, stress is predictable. That is, we can easily, detect where stress is basically, located in, different words.